Hey, it's Todd Berry from toddberry.com, and today we're going to talk about what I think is like the most ultimate strategy. You could call it a hack for high sustained productivity, right? You can do practically anything to have high productivity in a short window, but sustained productivity, that's the key to doing anything significant. And so this is something that I teach to corporations. I teach to coaching clients, and it's something that it almost feels like it should be intuitive, but it's not. And that's because I believe we get caught up in so many things. But I call it energy management. So if you think about it, there is nothing that you do that is of substance, especially if it's something that has any long-term value, that doesn't require a lot of energy, right? That's just part and parcel to the way the world works. And if you want to have high performance, you need high energy for a long period of time. And so the energy management, you could almost put this in the self-care category. The challenge with the self-care mindset often is that it seems optional in many cases. If it didn't seem optional, everybody would do it more frequently. And also there's lots of things that can fit into the self-care category, right? Like washing your hair is part of self-care, but it's not really part of sustained performance. So this is going to fit into the self-care box, so to speak, but it's a much more focused thing from the perspective of if you care about high performance and you care about it over long windows of time, maybe for your life. I mean, I think about everything in the big picture. One of my underlying principles is never do something in the short term that compromises your long term. It just doesn't make any sense. In fact, if you flip it around and everything you do from a proactive perspective is long-term oriented, your short terms are going to be pretty darn good most of the time. So you put this in the high performance category because if you want to build a successful life, you want to build a successful business, you need creative energy, you need mental energy, you need emotional energy, and you need physical energy. And so this is in circle one of the Three Circles Living platform, which is the ultimate way to build an amazing life over time. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some really quick things here and then include some personal hacks at the very end. So the first thing you have to do is you have to make it not optional. and why you would want to make this not optional, again, is putting it in the lens of productivity. And which anyone doing anything, let's talk about business, anybody doing anything in business understands how important productivity is. Well, someone with high sustained energy, who can be highly focused and highly dialed in and clear thinking and full of energy, can do more in 6 hours than someone of low energy can do in a day or two. That's just a fact, right? They're just able to be much more efficient. And of course, there's more to productivity than your energy, right? It's doing the right things at the right time, the right amount, right? There's a whole lot of other things that are in that pie, but this piece has to be there or you're not going to have sustained performance. You're just not. You're going to run out of steam, and even worse, you might get ill, right? That's just a real thing. So first, it's got to start in the morning, right? It's got to start with, and I'm walking you through things that I personally do. So I never teach anything I don't personally do. And if I am teaching something I don't personally do, well, I wouldn't be teaching it. It's just not who I am. And so it starts in the AM because you don't wake up the same way every day. And so you've got to find a way to get yourself in an optimal way of being in the morning. So I personally have a morning routine that includes some spiritual time and quiet time and exercise, of course, and making sure that I get hydrated right away and putting the right things in my mind and doing my personal development and journaling and reflecting. I do all that stuff first thing in the morning. Why? Because I've got to take care of me first. Why? If you think about it in the terms, you're the goose who's laying the golden egg. If you don't take care of the goose, you're going to run out of golden eggs, right? That's just the way it works. And so you have to take care of the goose in order for the goose to go do what needs to be done. And so however you do it, the morning has to have some component of feeding you and getting you prepared to show up the best way, because you're not guaranteed every morning you're going to wake up lit up. You're just not. And if you're like someone like me who has my whole life, I have to deal with a little bit of those chemical imbalances And I talk about this in Three Circles Living. There's more days where I wake up like Eeyore than I do like Tigger. And you want to be Tigger when you're coming in. You want to be a little, you don't want to be like blowing people away, but you want to have that kind of positive vibration, and that requires energy. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is to minimize stress and maximize peace. And this takes purpose. It's not going to happen without purpose. And so what I do and what I teach, number one, block negativity sources. If something feeds negative into your mind, you got to block it. And primarily that's going to come from a couple different directions. One is the media, right? The media tends to be negative. Just being real. It tends to be negative. So limit it. I'm not saying you shouldn't know what's going on in the world and stick your head in the sand. I know what's going on in the world, but I don't perseverate on it and I don't focus on it. I'm just aware. But I don't spend any time letting people fill my brain with garbage because it affects you emotionally, which affects you physically. It takes away from your energy. And then the second is people. This might be a little harder and you have to be a little more purposeful, but do not spend too much time around people that are negative influences. If they have a negative state of mind, if they're a downer, if they're constantly a source of agitation, whatever it is, peace is too important. And so you have to be conscious of minimizing your associations with negative people. You just do. I know there are some relationships you can't ignore that may have a negative person. Okay, that's part of life. But there's plenty that you can. And so you need to do your best to eliminate those things. So that's the second thing. That's the first primary thing. The second in this category, minimizing stress, maximizing peace, is something I call recreational development. Now, I have a video out there on this particular topic. But what it is, very simply, is there are things you really enjoy doing, that you actively enjoy doing. You need to make sure you do those things. And I'm not saying you should do them to excess because then you're avoiding life. I'm saying you should be doing them on a regular basis, at least a few times a week, because of all that they do for you. Yes, they relieve stress. Yes, they bring you joy. Yes, they make you feel a little bit vital. But there's so many other things, right? When you're doing things you enjoy, you're more creative and it allows you to work out. Like fishing is what I do. It's one of my primary things that I do in this thing. In this area, it allows me to think about things and to work out problems and to come up with ideas. And there's so many aspects. If you watch that video, recreational development, you'll get a really good understanding. That's another strategy I teach. But the bottom line for this is things that you enjoy doing can't be optional. You have to do them at least a few times a week. You have to, because it maximizes your peace and minimizes your stress. The third thing is get really clear. This could take you a tiny bit of work, but it's so worth it. Is clarify your values and your principles and let them drive your behaviors and your decisions. It so reduces stress because then you're operating congruently with who you really are and what you really care about. And when you operate that way, you don't have the cognitive dissonance of making a decision that puts you into some space of work or community of people or something that is counter to your values and principles. The last thing you want to do is start climbing a ladder and recognize that that ladder is against the wrong tree or building or whatever because you didn't really think about what it really meant for you and who you actually are. And so when you get clear on those things and you allow them to drive your decision making, there's a lot more peace and a lot less stress. And then the fourth part of this, which, or actually it's the third part of the overall message. You could put it in here to minimize stress and maximize peace, but it's its own separate category, is you've got to give your body the right resources. And so that starts with your foods, right? You got to eat quality foods. You've got to stay away from processed foods, minimize sugar as much as you possibly can. Things that make you feel bad, you've got to stay away from those. 90-10, I operate by the 90-10 rule. 90% of the time you do all the right stuff. 10% of the time do whatever you want. And trust me, that works really well. And so eat lots of fresh fruits, lots of fresh vegetables, and quality sources of protein and healthy fats. That you need to do that for the primary reason of that's what your body uses for physical energy because that's where you get your resources. But you don't get enough from that, but that's a start. Next is make sure you're hydrating. a lot of fatigue. And by the way, fatigue is not normal, right? So if you're fatigued, you could attribute it to rest, which is another factor. You want to be making sure you get enough rest. I probably left that out. You need to be getting enough rest. You can burn the candle, but you can't do it too long. You have to get rest because that's when your body does a whole bunch of magical stuff. When you're resting, it repairs and it builds. It does all the stuff you need it to do. And so you have to be getting rest, but you also need to hydrate, right? Because so fatigue, right? If you have generalized fatigue, it's generally because you're not getting the right nutrients in your body. You're probably dehydrated, or you're not getting enough rest, or worst case, you're doing something in your life you hate. And that'll fatigue you big time. But fatigue is not natural, and it tends to be a leading indicator that other stuff is going to go wrong. We're not going to get into the whole health journey part on this, but that's just the reality. So you got to make sure you hydrate. And then you also want to make sure you're getting your baseline nutrients from a supplement standpoint. So I'm going to share some products that I personally use, and there's a link to my free online shop below where you can go to the shop and you can buy products at my cost if you choose to. You can hear what I'm saying and you can go look them up and go get something else somewhere else. But it's so essential to put the right nutrients in your body. So first you need a broad spectrum vitamin and mineral at a minimum supplement, right? Because you're not going to get everything you need for optimal health and optimal energy just out of your food. Nobody does. It's just not a thing. That's a whole nother category, but if you did your research, you'd understand what I'm talking about. And I've been doing what I'm sharing with you for over 30 years, and it's led to an incredibly vibrant life. And so, again, do whatever you want, but I use a product called Daily BioBasics. That is like an essential thing I use every morning to make sure my body's getting everything I need. So one example, very simply, is your metabolism, right? Your literally your heartbeat is driven by things like calcium and magnesium. Most people don't even associate those things with that, but they're incredibly important. You got to make sure you have that. You got to make sure you have everything, because if you're missing anything, well, if you're really missing anything, like not getting any of it, that will be catastrophic from a health perspective. But if you're just deficient in anything, it's going to lead to health issues, and it's certainly not going to allow you to function at a high level. So I use a product called Daily BioBasics for that. The next is cellular energy. Your body uses something called CoQ10. The form I use is called Ubiquinol, and that feeds your body. It's tremendous for your baseline cellular energy. Then there's those little added times, right? When you want to do, maybe you need a little bump for something, and so there's three little kind of specific hacks I use for these kinds of times. So if I just want to have a little boost in energy for something I'm going to do, I'll use something called Real NRG, which is it's an awesome product. I eat it like with a spoon, but you can mix it in water too. But it's a clean, healthy energy source that you can access immediately. And it's like 50 cents, 55 cents a serving, as opposed to a couple bucks for something you'd buy in the store that you don't really know what's in there. And so it's a really healthy little energy boost if you need a little energy boost. For working out, I mean, I'm a big fan of working out, and I use a pre-workout called Be Focused. It's a very clean product. It's on all the athletic approved lists. It's got, and you can research all these and look deeply into all the information about all the nutrients and how they're put together, etc. If in fact you want to go check out these specific things. But again, I don't care what you do, just make sure you're doing it, because it's incredibly important for you. But this is a fabulous pre-workout product. It gives you, let's just put it this way, if you don't feel like working out and you take this in 30 minutes, you'll feel like working out. But more important is it's giving your body the resources to maximize that actual effort that you're putting in. And then the third one is, boy, this is one of my all-time favorites. It's called Brain Formula for focus and high brain activity. And so this is something that I use every day. And then I take it much more often when I'm working with groups, and maybe I've got to be dialed in for 4 or 6 hours at a time, you know, with a corporate group that I'm working with, and I will, or maybe I'm doing a seminar on a stage somewhere, and I will be popping these things like candy because they just light up your brain. And mental energy is important. Now, again, mental energy is impossible for the most part to accomplish unless you do it artificially without having physical energy. They transfer greatly. One does affect the other. But when you feel good physically, you tend to feel a lot better mentally. Not quite the reverse. You can feel really good mentally and not have so much energy physically. But the first one definitely feeds the other. So I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope that you will prioritize it. Energy management is so important for sustained productivity. And so back to just the basics review. You got to maximize peace, minimize stress. Block negativity out of your life as much as you can. Do things you love to do. Take care of yourself first thing in the morning. Clarify your values and principles and let them help make decisions as you walk this path of this wonderful thing we call life. Get adequate rest and put the right resources in your body. I hope that was helpful. I wish you a fabulous day.